Well, good morning, everybody. So happy to have you back as we're continuing our journey into Genesis chapter 6, verse 3. Now, we're starting this one where it basically says, "My spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. Huh? Okay. I read it and I was like, okay, let's move on. Let's look at this a little bit because this is interesting because a lot of people debate over this. Something that shouldn't be debated, but there's a false teaching in there that we've got to jet out of our system, okay? What is this false teaching? Here it comes. And that is the Jubilee prophecy. They believe that God is prophesizing something here. And I'm going to show you here in just a minute how wrong that is. Now, you're going to have to look this thing up because it's very detailed, and I'm just going to give you a brief kind of thing of what this was. But not true. Okay, so here we go. They used math to define what this prophecy meant. Now, they said that since God views one day as 1,000 years. Now, first, that's not what it said. What it said is, to God, one day is like, hence that word like, 1,000 years. Because people were asking, well, we asked God for something and it didn't happen. Why is it not happening? So, basically, they were saying, you may not see it happen right now, but to God, what you consider one day, he is considering like 1,000 years. So it's going to happen sometime later in a way that you may not even expect. It was a teaching tool to teach people on the patience of God, to be patient for God. So first thing, okay. Now, it's not a math thing, okay. God's one day is not 1,000 years. It's like 1,000 years, okay. So... and that's the correct Hebrew stuff for that. So we can't go there with that. And basically, they're talking about the seventh day being the Sabbath. And that the 7 years was, then after 7 years, there would be a Shema. Now, a Shema was all debts were forgiven, okay? And then... after that, there would be a Jubilee after 7 cycles. So after 7 times that this Shemitah was celebrated, there'd be a Jubilee, a big celebration to where everything was returned. So the land that people lost because they couldn't pay a debt or whatever was returned to them. So everybody got their land back. And... then they point to the fact that basically 119 Jubilees occurred when 1967 hit. And that's when Israel took back Jerusalem in the 6-Day War. And then they start adding up, and they say that because of what Jesus said, to where the final days, to where Jesus comes back, okay, after adding all this up, they said it was going to be in 2017. And that would be the final 120 years of what God's prophecy. So they're saying that God's is a prophecy for the future events, and that he was going to come back in 2017. You know why? Because we do not know the day or the hour of the Lord's return. And they just tried to do that. Guess what? It's 2021, folks. Didn't happen. So now they're saying, oh, well, it's kind of a guideline, in our math theory. So that way, it's going to happen really soon. Well, yeah, we believe it's going to happen soon, too. I mean, look at all the signs around us. But we're not saying when. I mean, we could be long gone by then. God could have taken us long before he decides to take the church and the rapture, if that's what you would believe, or for the tribulation to start and for him to come back down just at one time, which is what I would believe. We'll discuss that at a later time. But basically, This Jubilee process, no. I mean, there's too many things that the Bible says no, no, no on. Okay? So, again, if you want to look it up to try to, just to see what it is, as they go into detail about it, do that, because that's what I did. And red flags went off like a barrel of monkeys. So, that, no, I don't think so. So, basically, what does it mean? And that's interesting, because here are our main two concepts of what this 120 years means. We're going to look at them both. Now, the first concept is the literal one, where God basically, he's watched humanity fall from grace as bad as it did, and he's talking to Jesus and Holy Spirit and basically saying, you know what? Man's only going to live 120 years after this. That we're going to put it into it. How long they live, because they're just continuing evil, evil, evil. And they're going to continue with the evil, evil. But we can't let that evilness keep spreading that long between one family. Otherwise, just going to end like that again. So, and people say, well, wait a minute. That men after flood, they lived 500 years. They lived 403 years. They lived 207 years. And Moses was the first one recorded to live 120 years. Well, and then they basically, the ones that believe in this, they say, well, it slowly went down because it had to repopulate the earth, through Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So that's the way it went. They had to do that. So they slowly went down in age from there. And Moses, he only lived exactly 120 years. And then most people today, we don't live past 80. In fact, it does say later in the Bible that, 75 is most men's length of life. And if they're really good and really good themselves, they can live to 80. And most people only lived 80. There are a few that surpass that. There are some that's even surpassed the 120. It's rare, but it does happen. So that's the basic concept of a literal one. Okay, now let's go on to the next concept. And this concept was basically God saying, okay, I'm given 120 years. And then I'm going to flood the earth. I'm going to give them 120 years to turn themselves around before the flood gets here. Every warning sign. Noah's going to build the ark. And he's going to tell people, and he's going to keep preaching to them, and hopefully, they'll stop so I don't have to do this. That's basic concept of the countdown, which God knew already. It's like, yeah, I'm going to have to do it anyway, but, So, they say that, and people say, well, that doesn't make sense because, in Genesis 5, it says that Noah was 500 years old when he had his sons, and it was 600 when the flood started in Genesis 7. So, where's the 20 years? Well, they're saying, to this perspective, that 4 and 6 and 7, all that meshes together. Now, 5 kind of interrupts that just to give a genealogy account. So that way, remember, we discussed the genealogy stuff, but it had stopped so that way we could, kind of give an historical account from Adam to Noah. So that way the story can continue. That's the way Moses did it. And that in that between time, Moses was 500 years old. He had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then it says in the Bible that they had kids because when God told him to build the ark, he told him that his sons and his sons' wives were going to be on the ark. So they had to be at least old enough to marry. And they say, they were 20 years old when God told them what's going to happen and told them to build the ark. And then when he reached 600, boom, the flood came. So, it took about that 80 years. And then others and others say it's the same concept, except God told him to build the ark, and he had his kids, and he started building the ark without his kids, and then his kids joined when they got old enough. Could be, don't know. Bible doesn't say. You know, personally, if you ask me, either one of those two can be correct. They're both supported by the Bible. The literal concept, a little bit less, but as far as the story goes, as far as what goes, the countdown to the flood seems more plausible. Something we do not get hung up on, okay? This is something that's, okay, well, let's move on. And if people are trying to use that to disprove the Bible, you can go back and say, well, either one could be true. You know, and you kind of tell them the story, and the countdown seems to make more sense. So if you're asking me, I would say more lean toward more of the countdown, because it would make more sense that God would have waited this long. That's how patient he was with us. Remember, we discussed that before. He was patient, so therefore it took that long, and it took that long to build the ark also. I mean, this thing was huge. So, and it took a while to get it done. Was his sons old enough? My new point. Doesn't matter. Okay, so those are the concepts of what that is. You can decide for yourself on that one. But like I said, don't let it hang out. The Bible is true. Okay? God said that man's breath, it will not abide him forever. For his flesh, he's evil, and his days will be 120 years. Whether it was 120 years before the flood hit, or whether it's 120 years, that's the max for man to live. Okay, we're good with that. Why do we need to know more? All right, so I see my time's out. So what's my final thought? Here you go, folks. Is that there's some things in the Bible we're not going to understand. And we'll understand when we get there. My final thought is, don't get caught up on every single little verse. Remember, we're doing a whole concept here. The concept of the Bible is the gospel. What is going to happen? Who is going to come? What happened when he came? And then, what's the end result? And that end result leads all the way back to the beginning again, where God makes a new heaven and earth, and we're back to paradise. Beginning to end, end to beginning, middle to beginning, middle to end. See how this all works? It folds it together like one big, beautiful love story. And like I've said before, God doesn't change. Patient, love, kind. I mean, it's amazing that when you delve into it and you see it, it just blows your mind. God's the same yesterday, today, and forever, folks. So that's my point. All right, so we can go with that. All right, don't get caught up on this stuff, okay? Don't let people say it's not true just because there are different aspects of what people want to think it is. But focus it back on what the Bible says. Okay? I do it like the story is going, okay? Like the story from beginning to the end. You know, that's why that second concept makes more sense to me. What makes more sense to you? What can be backed up by the Bible? Okay? What does Jesus have to say? Use all of these in determining your answer. All right? As for the 120 years, probably both. That would be my guess. Probably both, I guess. Something to ask Jesus when we get there. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. So, anyway, I'm the Bald Guy. I am out of here. Looking forward to the next video as we wrap this thing up with who are these Nephilim guys? You know, what is all of that about? Because you hear about it, so you want to know about it, right? So let's find out who these guys were in our next video. And I'll look forward to joining the conversation. So I will see you then. This is Bald Guy. I'm out. God bless. Have a good one, folks.